Assalamu alaikum. Please move forward a little bit so people can come in, please.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Hayya 'ala as-salah. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء. واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، فإن خير الكلام كلام الله، وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. Dear brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has favored us with al-Islam and said, Inna ad-deen 'inda Allah al-Islam. The religion acceptable to Allah only is al-Islam, which means submission to Him and following His Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And al in Arabic means, in this case, the Islam of the Prophet sallallahu, not any other Islam. The Islam of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, not any other Islam. And he also said, subhanahu wa ta'ala, الْيَوْمَ أَكْمَلْتُ لَكُمْ دِينَكُمْ. Today I have perfected your religion for you. وَأَتْمَمْتُ عَلَيْكُمْ نِعْمَتِي. And I have made complete my favor upon you. رَضِيتُ لَكُمُ الْإِسْلَامَ دِينًا. And I have become pleased for you with Islam as your religion. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu said, أَعَزَّنَا اللَّهُ بِالْإِسْلَامِ. Allah has made us strong and honorable with al-Islam, with our religion of Islam, which means Tawheed, La ilaha illallah, and Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Meaning worshipping Allah alone, knowing Him correctly, and following Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. And Umar said, radiallahu anhu, whenever we seek izzah, honor and strength in any other than Islam, Allah humiliates us. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, when you deal one another in treacherous transactions like al-ina, which means a person sells something to another person for a time, in installments, and then buys it back of him in cash, and he benefits the difference. And he said, when you deal one another in that way, meaning cheating one another, and you take or follow the tails of cows, and you are happy with agriculture and you leave jihad, Allah will bring about humiliation to you, and He will not remove it until you return to your religion. All of this I'm trying to show, as the scholars of Islam say, that the izzah of the Muslims, the strength and the honor and the greatness of the Muslims is in them being Muslims, in them knowing their religion and following it. Not trying to do something else from the dunya and compete in it with the non-Muslims. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blamed the people who have knowledge of this world, but that knowledge does not lead them to get close to Him and to worship Him alone. And He said in Surah Ar-Rum, at the beginning of Surah Ar-Rum, the Romans, He said, وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. But most people do not know. And He said, يَعْلَمُونَ ظَاهِرًا مِنَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. They know the apparent things of this world. وَهُمْ عَنِ الْآخِرَةِ هُمْ غَافِلُونَ. And they are totally ignorant and unmindful of the hereafter. So today I want to draw the attention of everyone present that our strength lies in going back to the Islam of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, and the Islam of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, and the Islam of the four Imams rahimahumullah, not the Islam of people who claim to be upon that, who claim to be upon the Sunnah, who claim to be following the four Imams, and who claim to be following the scholars of Islam. Because as they say, talk is cheap. It's easy to talk. It's very easy to talk. But to actually prove it in deed and in action is very difficult. That is why, if you look around, we find that in this time, there have never been more Muslims with degrees. If you analyze the history of Islam, there have never been more literacy among the Muslims than now. We have never had more doctors and lawyers and everyone else with higher education. But what is the problem then? That we find ourselves weak and oppressed in many cases, and not able, even in some countries, to practice your Islam. The reason is that they went away and far from the knowledge, the most important ilm And that is the knowledge of the Quran and the Sunnah and its application. And the Imams of the Salaf, and the Salaf means those who preceded us, as it is clear for anyone who studies the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and the hadith and the seerah of the Salaf, the Sahaba and those who followed them. They used to say the Salaf are the Sahaba, the Salaf are those who came before us. Anyone who studies them, he sees that they emphasize the Quran and the Sunnah, the correct beliefs. And of course, when we have Muslims differing about Allah, like I said to the students many times, and I say it in the khutbah, we have Muslims differing about Allah. Some people saying He's everywhere. Some people saying He's above the throne. Some people saying, I don't even know where Allah is. Some people saying it's not allowed to ask and to think where Allah is. And our difference between us and the non-Muslims is Allah, about Allah, then everything else. And Allah said in the Quran that those who say Allah is one of three have disbelieved. And Allah said in the Quran that those who say that Isa is son of Allah have disbelieved. Those who say that Isa is Allah have disbelieved. And we have some Muslims saying that Allah is in everyone. Allah is in everything. And we want to unite. We want to be strong. We want to do something. How can we do it when we differ even about Allah? Before we go to anything else. So for that reason, the Salaf, they used to say, including the four Imams, Al-i'tisamu bis-sunnati najah. Following the Sunnah is salvation. As the Prophet ﷺ said, that my ummah will divide into 73 sects, all of them in the hellfire except one. They said, which one? He said, the one who will be upon what I am upon and my companions. And whenever we look in the history of Islam, and we must learn from our history and the history of other peoples, and anyone who doesn't learn from his past has no future, as many people say. We see that in the history of Islam, every time that Muslims respected the Quran and the Sunnah the correct way, Allah helped them, even if they were few in number. Any time the Muslims disrespected the Quran and the Sunnah, even if they were many like now, Allah humiliates them. Allah humiliates them. And we find that now. So what is the salvation? To go back to the Islam mentioned in the Quran. Al-Islam. Because we have so many Islams now. People are confused. Which Islam do we follow? A very simple answer. The Islam of the Prophet ﷺ and the Islam of his companions. And the four Imams, rahimahumullah, none of them said, follow me and leave the Sunnah. None. Don't believe those who say that. All of them said, if my saying contradicts the Sunnah, take the Sunnah, leave my saying. That is how they became Imams. That is why Allah raised them, because they raised the Sunnah, they raised Tawheed. For that reason, we must go back to what makes us strong, to what makes the Muslims the envy of other people. Not to run after things that are useful but not as useful as Tawheed and Sunnah, and at the expense of Tawheed and Sunnah. As soon as we start in our hearts respecting the Quran, how do we respect the Quran? Some people respect the Quran by kissing it. They say this is respect, and they keep kissing it. If that was respect, the Sahaba would have kissed it so much that the Quran would be wet. But that's not how Sahaba respected the Quran. Some people say to respect the Quran is to hang it in my shop, to hang it on the wall of my house, or to keep it in my pocket in a very small size. This is not respect of the Quran. If that were the respect of the Quran, the Sahaba would have done it, and more than us. But what is the respect of the Quran? Most people who read the Quran don't understand the Quran, therefore they don't respect it, because they don't know what Allah said. We have to try and know what Allah said. To respect the Quran is to know what Allah said and to do it. That is the respect of the Quran. And as soon as we start respecting the Quran in the correct way, it will show on our deeds. We will start respecting what Allah said. And the same applies to the Sunnah, the way of the Prophet ﷺ. As soon as we know what respect of the Sunnah is, we will start respecting the ulama of the Sunnah. Now we respect sometimes football players who are not even Muslims more than the ulama of the Sunnah. We are ready to sacrifice many things for things that are not important sometimes, and we are not ready to sacrifice anything to learn one hadith or to learn Arabic so we can understand that ayah or that hadith. For that reason, today I want to remind myself and my respected brothers and sisters of the importance of going back to the right ilm, the right knowledge. Because whenever Allah says ilm in the Quran and Sunnah, it means only one thing: the knowledge of what He revealed upon Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, who used to say, you are more knowledgeable of your dunya than me. And he used to say, Ana a'lamukum billah. I know Allah more than you, any one of you. So which knowledge is more important? The knowledge of the Quran and Sunnah. Does it mean all of us have to become ulama of the Quran and Sunnah? No, it's not possible, it's not realistic. But all of us must respect the ilm of the Quran and Sunnah. All, without exception. And we must try to know what Allah said. We must try to know what the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said. That is why the Salaf, all of them, including the four Imams, because the four Imams are from the Salaf, rahimahumullah, they used to say, the Sunnah is like the ark or the ship of Noah, Nuh. Whoever goes on it will be saved. Whoever leaves it will be drowned, will be destroyed. For that reason, we must know how to correctly respect the Quran and Sunnah and leave everything that contradicts the Quran and Sunnah. One of those ways is to understand the Quran and the Sunnah correctly. Correctly. And that is the way of the Sahaba and the Salaf, including, like I said, and I emphasize, the four Imams. Don't be fooled by people who say they follow one of the four Imams and they differ with them in their understanding of the Aqidah of the Quran and Sunnah, the belief, and the application of the Quran and Sunnah. They differ with them totally. And those people are not on the way of the Sunnah because they do not apply the Sunnah how the Imams of Islam applied the Sunnah and Tawheed. For that reason, the most important knowledge that we have is the knowledge that is specific to the Muslims, and that is the knowledge of the Quran and the Sunnah. And it is not correct for us to learn how to pronounce the letters of the Quran and to ignore the meanings of the Quran. And the Salaf used to become angry with that. And they used to become angry with people who collect hadith just to say that he has so many hadith and he doesn't know what the hadith means and he doesn't do it. And the Sahaba radiallahu anhum used to learn 10 ayat of the Quran and practice them, then go further. And that's how we should try and gain the knowledge and practice with the Quran and the Sunnah, not forgetting the tarbiyah of the Quran and the Sunnah. the manners, because Islam is our relationship with Allah and our relationship with people. Many people spend lots of time perfecting their relationship with Allah, which is correct. And that is number one priority. And they spend very little or no time at all thinking of how they interact with other people. And that is extremely important as well. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. Dear brothers and sisters, a person may ask, does it mean that if the most important knowledge of Islam is the knowledge of the Quran and Sunnah, does that mean that we can't get any other knowledge? Of course, this question can only be asked by someone who doesn't know much about the Quran and Sunnah. Why? Because no one in his right mind says that you shouldn't learn anything else. And that is not correct, of course. The Prophet ﷺ said, احرص على ما ينفعك. Be eager to do and learn whatever benefits you. So that means that the number one priority for us is to know the right way to Jahannam and to avoid it, and the right way to Jannah and to follow it. Jahannam meaning the hellfire, Jannah the paradise. After that we have to look. Is something we want to learn permissible in Islam? Or is it haram? It's not allowed because it harms us, it harms our religion. Or it harms our thinking and intellect, aql. Or it harms our wealth, or it harms our honor, or it harms ourselves. If it is halal, is the environment we learn in halal? We have to look at that. And so on and so forth. And therefore, I encourage all the brothers and sisters, young and old, to keep learning all their lives. And the most important knowledge, as I said, is the knowledge about Allah, His Prophet ﷺ, and His religion. Anything else that benefits us can even be obligatory to know. Can even become obligatory. How? If we are in a country that needs people who build buildings, engineers, architects, we need to build roads, we need to develop the country, and we don't have anyone who knows it, it becomes obligatory upon us as a group to have a group of us who know it, who are experts on that. We need healthcare, we need medicine. So we need a group of people who know that. And so on and so forth. So that has to follow the number one knowledge and ilm, which is the knowledge of the Quran and the Sunnah. And the practice of the Quran and the Sunnah. And I warn everyone not to look down upon our brothers and sisters who may not have higher education. Why do I warn? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala favored the best people among the people, and they are the prophets and messengers alayhimu salatu wassalam. And most of them, and in fact the Prophet ﷺ said all of them used to be shepherds. And they said, even you, O Messenger of Allah, he said, even I used to look after sheep for the people of Mecca for some money. And now we have a culture, if you don't have higher education, you don't represent much. You don't have a big salary, miskin. Miskin, yani not only in material ways, poor, but we don't care about you. If you have higher education, that's great. We look at you, we consider you, even if you don't pray. Even if you don't know anything about Quran. You disrespect Islam even. That is incorrect. Look how many of our brothers and sisters look after our masajid everywhere, in Emirates and other countries. We must love them and respect them. Because the Prophet ﷺ once was informed of a lady who was black. And that shows the greatness of Islam. We don't have discrimination in Islam. We may have discrimination among the Muslims, because some Muslims still have jahiliyyah in them. They may be ignorant, They discriminate, you brown, you black, you green, you blue, you yellow. But in Islam we don't have that. And that black lady died who used to sweep the masjid, look after the masjid. And this hadith is in Bukhari and Muslim. And the Prophet ﷺ said, where is she? I don't see her. They said, she died. And the narrator said, as if they made, like, look down upon her. It's not a big deal, meaning. And the Prophet ﷺ became angry and said, where is her grave? You should have informed me. And he went and prayed over her, for Allah to forgive her. So dear brothers and sisters, we should be humble people. Because as one alim said, when he saw someone being arrogant, he said, do you know me, that arrogant man? He said, yes, I know you. He said, you come from water which is despised, as Allah said. And your origin is that. And then you become, he said, Anta bidayatuka nutfatun madira, ay fasida. Wa nihayatuka jifatun qadira. And your ending is a dead body that doesn't smell very good. He wants to show him not to be arrogant. وَبَيْنَ ذَلِكَ تَحْمِلُ الْعَذِرَةِ. And in between, when you're alive, in your body you carry a lot of impure things. Meaning, don't become arrogant. And that's what Allah said in the Quran. Let man look at himself. However higher education we may have or not have, that's not what Allah looks at. So we must be humble. Allah looks, the Prophet ﷺ said, at our hearts and at our deeds. So we must be careful, as the Prophet ﷺ said to his wives, he said, wake them up to pray. فَرُبَّ كَاسِيَةٍ فِي الدُّنْيَا عَارِيَةٌ فِي الْآخِرَةِ. Maybe he said, someone who has clothes in this world is naked on the day of judgment. Meaning that you may look nice here, but you don't look nice there, because you didn't do much good. And he's saying it to his wives. So, dear brothers and sisters, we must be humble. And we must know that the most important and the source of the strength and dignity of the Muslims is Sunnah, is Tawheed, correctly believing in Allah, and that means Tawheed, practicing and following the Sunnah. May Allah make us strong with Tawheed and Sunnah, and make all Muslims strong with Tawheed and Sunnah, and protect all Muslims with Tawheed and Sunnah, all of the Muslims, big and small and rich and poor and everyone else. Wa aqimus salat.